Chapter 4, Cosmology. What is the form of the world? The prince recited.
Above are the heavens, abode of Indra and the gods who sit around his throne. There, in the center of the seven worlds peopled by celestial beings, lies the Milky Ocean, on which Vishnu sleeps, waking only when the earth grows overburdened with unrighteousness. Below it stretches our earth, which would tumble into the great void if it were not supported upon the hoods of Sisha, the thousand headed serpent. Further below is the underworld, where the demons who hate the light of the sun have their kingdom.
The tutor asked, what is the origin of the four castes?
When the Supreme Being manifested himself, the Brahmin was born from his head, the Kshatriya from his arm, the Vaishya from his thigh, and the Shudra from his foot.
What, therefore, is the duty of the Kshatriya?
The warrior king must honor men of wisdom, treat other kings with the respect due to equals, and rule his people with a firm yet merciful hand. In war, he should be fierce and fearless until death, for the warrior who dies on the battlefield goes to the highest of heavens. He must protect anyone who seeks refuge with him, be generous to the needy, and keep his given word though it leads to his destruction.
And my brother faltered, forcing me to offer assistance from behind the curtain. Forefathers, I hissed. Vengeance.
And most of all,
Dri took a breath and continued.
he must bring renown to his forefathers by avenging the honor of his family.
Through the gauze of the curtain, I could see the tutor frown. The holy thread that hung across his bony chest equate with agitation. Though he was alarmingly learned, he wasn't much older than us. The curtain was there because otherwise my presence flustered him so much that he was quite unable to reach. "O great prince," he said now, "kindly ask your sister princess to refrain from prompting you. She's not helping you to learn. Will she be sitting behind you in your chariot in battle when you needed to remember these important perspectives? Perhaps it is best if she no longer joins us during your studies." He was always trying to discourage me from attending these lessons, and he wasn't the only one. At first, no matter how much I begged, King Draupadi had balked at the thought of me studying with my brother. A girl being taught what a boy was supposed to learn. Such a thing had never been heard of in the royal family of the Panchaaali. Only when Krishna insisted that the prophecy at my birth required me to get an education beyond what women were actually given, and that it was the king's duty to provide this to me. Did he agree with reluctance? Even Daima, my accomplice in so many other areas of my life, regarded the lessons with misgiving. She complained that they were making me too hard headed and argumentative, too manlike in my speech. Dri too sometimes wondered if I wasn't learning the wrong things, ideas that would only confuse me as I took up a woman's life with its prescribed restrictive laws. But I hungered to know what about the amazing, mysterious world that extended past what I could imagine. The world of the senses and of which lay beyond them. And so I refused to give up the lessons, no matter who disapproved. Not wanting to antagonize the tutor further, I made my voice contrite. "Respected teacher, my apologies. I promise not to interrupt again." The tutor stared fixed at the ground.
Great prince, kindly remind your sister that last week too she promised us the same thing.
Dhri He did smile. Most learned one. Please forgive her. As you know, being a girl, she is cursed with a short memory. Additionally, she is of an impulsive nature, a failing in many females. Perhaps you could instruct her as to conduct expected of a Kshatriya woman? The tutor shook his head.
This is not my area of expertise, for it is not fitting that a celibate should think too much on the ways of women who are the path to ruin. It would be better if the princess learns such things, and others as well, from the large and daunting lady who is her nurse, and who can, one hopes, discipline her better than I. I will recommend this excellent course of action to your royal father.
I was dismayed by this sudden turn in events. No doubt my father, armed with the tutor's complaints, would try once again to dissuade me from attending the lessons. Now, we did spend a great deal of time arguing. Rather, he would rant and I would be forced to listen. Or worse, he would order me to stop and I would be forced to obey. Additionally, I resented the tutor's declaration that women were the root of all the world's troubles. Perhaps that was why, when he gathered up his palm leaf manuscripts and rose to leave, I pushed the curtain aside and gave him a brilliant smile as I bowed. The effect was better than that I hoped. He jumped as though stung. Manuscripts fell, helter skelter from his hands. I had to put the end of my sari over my face to hide my laughter, although I knew there would be trouble later. But inside a current surged through me at the discovery of a power I didn't know I had. Dri shot me a remonstrative look as he helped the tutor pick up everything. Later, he would say,
Did you have to do that?
he was being so difficult, and all those things he accused women of, they are not true. I did expected my brother to agree, but instead he gave me a considering look. With a shock, I realized that he was changing. Besides, it was just a smile, I continued, but with less confidence.
The problem with you is you're too pretty for your own good. It'll get you into trouble with men sooner or later if you're not careful. No wonder father's being worried about what to do with you.
I was surprised. First, at the news that my father spared me any thought, and the second, at my brother's compliment. Backhanded thought it was. Dream never commented on my looks, nor did he encourage me to comment on his. Such useless talk, he believed, made people vain. Was this another sign of change? But I merely said, how is that father never worries about you? Is it because you are so ugly? My brother refused to raise to the bed.
Boys are different from girls.
He said with solid patience.
When will you accept that?
In revenge, the tutor shot a last comment at me from behind the safety of the door that led to the passage.
Yes. I have recalled one rule of conduct which you may tell your sister. A Kshatriya woman's highest purpose in life is to support the warriors in her life, her brother, father, husbands, and sons. If they should be called to wars, she must be happy that they have the opportunity to fulfill a heroic destiny. Instead of praying for their safe return, she must pray that they die with glory on the battlefield.
And who decided that a woman's highest purpose was to support men? I burst out as soon as we were alone. A man, I would wagger. Myself, I plan on doing other things in my life. Three smiled, but half heartedly.
The tutor wasn't totally wrong. When I leave for the final battle, that's what I would like you to pray for.
The word moved over me like a finger of ice. Not if, but when. With what chill acceptance my brother spoke it. He left the room before I could contradict him. I thought of the husband and sons that everyone assumed I would have someday. The husband I couldn't visualize, but the sons I imagined as miniature versions of three, with the same straight, serious eyebrows. I promised myself I did never pray for their deaths. I did teach them instead to be the survivors. And why was a battle necessary at all? Surely there were other ways to the glory, even for men. I did teach them to search for those. I wished I could teach this to Dri as well, but I feared it was too late. Already he had started thinking like the men around him, embracing the world of the court with open arms. And I? Each day I thought less and less like the women around me, and each day I moved further from them into a dusky solitude. Dri was given other lessons, though these I couldn't share. Late mornings, he fought with sword and spear and mace with the commander of the Panchaaali army. He learned to wrestle, to ride horses and elephants, to manage a chariot in case his charioteer was killed in battle. From the Nishad, who was my father's chief hunter, he learned archery and the ways of forest people, how to survive without food or water, how to read the spoor of animals. In the afternoons, he sat in the court and observed my father dispensing justice. Evenings, for a king must know how to use his leisure appropriately. He played dice and other noble born youth, or attended quill fights or went boating. He visited the homes of courtesans, where he partook of drink, music, dance, and other pleasures. We never discussed these visits, though sometimes I spied on him when he returned late at night. His lips reddened from alaktaka, a garland around his neck. I spent hours imagining the woman who had placed it there. But no matter how much sura he drank or lotus fiber he ate, each morning my brother was up before daybreak. From my window, I could see him bathe, shivering in cold water. He insisted on drawing himself from the courtyard cistern, ignoring Dhaima's remonstrations. I would hear him chanting prayers of the sun. O great son of Kashyap, color like the hibiscus. O light of lights, destroyer of disease and sin, I bow to you. And then, from the Manu Samhita, he who had not conquered himself, how will that king conquer enemies? Some evenings they didn't go out. Instead, cloistered in with one minister or another, he learned statecraft, the art of preserving a kingdom, of strengthening its borders, of allying with other rulers, or subduing them during battle, of recognizing spices who might have wormed their way into the palace. He learned also the differences between righteous and unrighteous war and when to use each. These were the lessons I most envied him, the lessons that conferred power. They were the ones I needed to know if I were to change the history. And so I cajoled Dri shamelessly, forcing him to share reluctant bites with me. In righteous war, you fight only with men that are your equal in rank. You don't attack your enemies at night or when they're retreating or unarmed. You don't strike them on the back or below the navel. You use your celestial astras only on warriors who have themselves have such weapons. What about unrighteous war? You don't need to know about that. my brother said. I've told you too much already. Why do you want all this information, anyways? One day I said, tell me about the celestial astras. I didn't think he'd agree, but he shrugged. I guess there's no harm in telling you, since you'll never have anything to do with them. They are weapons that must be invoked with special chants. They come from the gods and return to them after being used. The most powerful ones can be used only once in a warrior's lifetime. Do you have an astra? Can I see it? They can't be seen, not until you have called them. And then you must use them right away. Otherwise, the power might turn against you. They say that some, like the Brahmastra, wrongly used, can destroy all of creation. In any case, I don't have any. Not yet. I had my suspicion about the existence of such astras. They sounded too much like tales old soldiers would make up to impress novices. Oh, they're real enough, he said. For instance, when Arjun captured our father, he used the Raju Astra to enclose him in an invisible net. That's the reason the Panchal forces couldn't rescue him, even though he was only a spear's length away. But very few teachers know the art of summoning them. That's why father has decided that when the time is right, I must go to Drona in Hastinapur and ask him to accept me as his student. I stared at him in shock. Surely he was joking, but my brother never joked. Finally, I managed to say, Father has no right to humiliate you this way. You must refuse. Besides, why would Drona agree to teach you when he knows you'll use the knowledge and try to kill him? He'll teach me, my brother said. He must have tried, for he sounded bitter, which was rare for him. He'll teach me because he is a man of honor, and I'll go because it's the only way I can fulfill my destiny. I don't wish to imply that King Draupadi neglected my education. An unending stream of women flowed through my apartments each day, attempting to instruct me in the 64 arts that noble ladies must know. I was given lessons in singing, dancing, playing music. I was taught to draw, paint, sew, and decorate the ground with age old auspicious designs, each meant for a special festival. I was better at composing and solving riddles, responding to wit remarks, and writing poetry, but my heart was not in such frivolities. Each lesson I felt the world of women tightening its noose around me. I had a destiny to fulfill that was no less monotonous than threes. Why was no one concerned about preparing me for it? When I mentioned this to Dhaima, she clicked her tongue with impatience. Where do you get all these notions? Your destiny as important as the prince. She rubbed the brahmi oil into my scalp to cool my head. Besides, don't you know a woman must be prepared for her destiny in a different way? Dhaima herself taught me the rules of comportment, how to walk, talk, and sit in the company of men, how to do the same when only women are present, how to show respect to queens who are more important, how to subtly snoop lesser princesses, how to intimidate the other wives of my husband. I don't need to learn that, I protested. My husband won't take another wife. I'll make him promise that before I marry him. Your arrogance, girl, she said, is the only exceeded by your optimism. Kings always take other wives, and men always break the promises they make before marriage. Besides, if you're married off like Panchaal's other princesses, you won't even get a chance to talk to your husband before he beds you. I draw in a sharp breath to contradict her. She gave me a challenging grin. She relished our arguments, most of which she won. But this time, I didn't launch into my usual triad. Was it a memory of Krishna? The cool silence with which he countered disagreement. That stopped me. I saw something I hadn't realized before. Words wasted energy. I would use the strength instead to nurture my belief that my life would unfurl uniquely. Perhaps you're right, I said sweetly. Only time will tell. She scowled. It wasn't what she was expecting. But then a different kind of grin appeared on her face. Why, princess? She said. I do believe you're growing up. The day Daima told me I was ready to visit my father's wives to test my social skills, I was surprised by the excitement that surged through me. I hadn't realized how much I craved companionship. I had been curious about the queens, especially Sulochana, who flitted elegance and betrayal along the periphery of my life. In the past, I did resented them for ignoring me, but I was willing to let go of that. Perhaps now that I was grown, we could be friends. Surprisingly, although the queens knew I was coming, I had to wait a long time in the visitors' hall before they appeared. When they did arrive, they spoke to me stiffly in brief inaccurates and wouldn't meet my eyes. I drew on all my speaking skills, but the conversations I began soon disintegrated into silence. Even Sulochana, whose breath grace I had so admired during the festival of Shiva, seemed a different person. She responded to my greetings in monosyllables and kept her two daughters close to her. But one of them, a charming girl of about 5 years with curly hair and her mother's shining complexion, squirmed away from Sulochana and ran to me. Her eye must have been caught by the jeweled peacock pendant I wore. I did dressed with care for the visit, for she put on a finger to touch it. I lifted her on my lap and unclasped the chain so she could play with the pendant. But Sulochana snatched her away and slapped her so hard that the red finger marks marred the child's fair cheek. She burst into bewildered tears, not knowing why was she punished. I stared at the queen in shock, my own face tingling with shame as though I were the one who's been slapped. Soon afterwards, Sulochana retired to her chambers and excuses of ill health that were clearly false. When I reached my rooms, I couldn't hold back my tears. What wrong did I do? I asked Daima as I wept against her ample bosom. You did fine. Ignorant cows, they're just scared of you. Of me? I asked, startled. Why hadn't thought of myself as particularly fearsome? Why? She pressed her lips together, angrier than I had ever seen her. But she couldn't, or wouldn't, give me an answer. I began to notice things though. My maidservants, even though who had been with me for years, kept their distance till summoned. If I asked them anything of a personal nature, how their families were, for instance, or when they were getting married, they grew tongue tied and escaped from my presence as soon as they could. The merchants in the city who routinely visited the apartments of the queen would send their wares to me through Dhaima. Even my father was uneasy when he visited me and rarely looked directly into my eyes. I began to wonder whether Three's tutor's nervousness at my interruptions had a less flattering cause than my beauty, and whether my lack of friends and visitors was due not to my father's strictness, but to people's awareness of someone who wasn't born like a normal girl, and who, if prophecy was correct, wouldn't live a normal woman's life. Did they fear contagion? Already, the world I knew was splitting in two. The larger part, by far, consisted of people like Slochana who couldn't see beyond their little lives of mundane joys and sorrows. They suspected anything that fell outside the boundaries of custom. They could perhaps accept men like three who were divinely born to fulfill a destiny shaped by the gods. But to women, especially women who might bring change the way a storm brings the destruction of lightning, all my life they would shun me. But the next time I promised myself, as I wiped my angry tears, I would be prepared. The other group consisted of those rare persons who were themselves harbingers of change and death, or those who could laugh at such. They wouldn't fear me, though I suspected they well might hate me if I neither rose. So far, I knew only three such people: Dri, Krishna, and Dharma, transformed by her affection for me. But surely there were others. As I shafted into my father's palace, I longed to find him, for only they could provide the companionship I ached for. I wonder how long I would have to wait before destiny brought them into my life. And I hoped that when it did so, one of them would be my husband.